What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Well, along with the Havencraft video today that we also released, I am excited to talk about Runecraft. We know Kuon is definitely surfacing the face of Runecraft right now, but let's see if Cinderella Girls has anything that can either support the deck or support the Cinderella Girls route for Runecraft. Alright, and the first card we're looking at is Kawashima Mizuki, so she's a 7-cost 7/7. You can activate by engaging this card to deal 3 damage to all enemy leaders and all followers on the enemy field. If there are 9 or more cards with each card having different original cost in your graveyard, deal 7 damage instead. So I'd say this is a pretty neat card for Cinderella Girls. I wouldn't say it's a big thing for Runecraft, but dealing 3 damage to the entire board is pretty nice and to face. But if you have those 9 or more cards, which will really be more practical for Cinderella Girls, dealing 7 might be something you might be looking into as well. Alright, but next up we have Ichinosuke Shiki, so she's a 5-cost 2/5. You can evolve her for 2, but when she comes into play fanfare, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. From among them, you may put a card into your EX area and then you put the rest to the graveyard. You can also activate to engage this card and discard a card, and you can choose a follower from the enemy field and deal 5 damage to it. So a nice little interesting effects. The one thing I personally don't like about bigger bodies for Runecraft is that you play these 5-cost guys and you have to evolve them for 2, so it kind of puts you in a really awkward position when evolving these cards. But it is nice you're able to look at the top 3 and put a card into your EX area, and I'm pretty sure with this evolve you can make the card in your EX area free. Alright, and then we have the Shiki Evolve, so it's a 4/7, and on Evolve you choose up to 1 card in your EX area, deal damage equal to the chosen original cost to your leader. This turn when you play that card, it costs 0. You can also activate again to engage this card and discard a card and choose a follower on the enemy field and deal 5 damage to it. Alright, so I was correct, but this one has a little bit of backlash. So whatever card you put into your EX area from the top 3, you're going to be dealing damage to yourself. The card is now free and you can use it, but you really got to figure out what's the takeaway from it. Are you going to be able to gain some life back, like maybe the amulets from Haven are able to just like heal you and you get off the top 3 for Cinderella Girls? Or in Runecraft, let's say, you might be wanting to do D-Shift, and then you get top 3 of D-Shift and you have to deal 12 damage to yourself, but you do get the D-Shift for free. Alright, next up we have Shiomi Suyuko, so she's a 9-cost 3/3. When you play this card, you discard 3 Dorimus cards, subtract 6 from this card's cost. When it comes into play, you choose a follower from the enemy field, deal 4 damage to it, and then draw 2 cards. Alright, so this card is pretty helpful going into your Mizuki card, of course, because you're going to be discarding 3 Dorimus cards, and then hopefully those cards will have different costs so you can feel up to that 9 that you want to get to dealing 7 to face and 7 to board. But it also helps that the Shiomi is a 3-cost that does draw 2 and deal 4 damage to something. But moving on, we have Hayami Kanaide, and she's a 3-cost 3/3, and you can evolve her for 1. And looking at the Hayami Evolve, so she turns into a 4/4, but on Evolve you can use less than 2, choose a follower on the enemy field, and deal 4 damage to it. So not bad for a 3-cost card with an Evolve, just so you can deal 4 damage to something and then swing into another follower if that situation goes for it. But it does kind of feel bad in some situations where you might be using less than 2 when you have other cards that might be using lessons as well. And then next up we have Center of the Street, so it's a 3-cost quick spell. You choose a follower on the enemy field and deal 5 damage to it, and if there's a passion follower on your field, you draw a card. So we have a quick spell that's Witch Bolt with a stipulation of drawing a card with passion followers. So I don't know if Rune players are going to be switching this card out for Witch Bolt or whatnot, because sometimes with Witch Bolt it really feels good to use the Merlin and use that card in your cemetery to go ahead and draw a card after you evolve, since that's how the interaction works. But Center of the Street isn't a bad card to be looking at. Alright, next up we have Araki Hina, so she's a 2-cost 2/2, and you can evolve her for 1. And looking at the Hina Evolve, so she turns to a 3/3, but on Evolve you choose a Dorimus spell in your graveyard with an original cost of 2 or less, and you may play it for 0. Alright, so off the top of my head, I can't think of any Dorimus spells that you can play for 2 or less out of your cemetery, but it is cute that this is like a little mini Merlin, except for the fact that you don't get to add a card from your deck. But moving on, we have Miyamoto Frederica, so she's a 2-cost 2/2, and once per turn, when you play a card with an original cost of 5 or higher, choose an enemy leader or a follower on the enemy field and deal 3 damage to it and draw a card. So 100% when you play this card, go ahead and expect this card to be dealt with, because nobody wants you to be dealing damage to face just because you're playing cards, and then you're also going to be drawing as well. So this card is really good. It's just the fact that its stats really suck and it can really be taken care of easily, so be careful when playing this card. Alright, and next up we have Precious Little Devil, so it's a 1-cost quick spell. You choose a follower on the enemy field and deal 2 damage to it, and if there are 3 or more Dorimus followers on your field, deal 3 damage instead. Alright, most of you soldiers already know what this is about. This is just a archetypal angelic snipe. Now the lamplit one, sure enough, said that if your follower was racing, it does 3 damage. Now if you have 3 or more Dorimus followers on your field, you'll deal 3 damage instead. Alright, next up we have Matsumoto Serena, so she's a 3-cost 1/5, and when we play a spell, choose a follower from the enemy field and deal 2 damage to it. A pretty interesting card, just unfortunately you're not able to deal the 2 damage to like leaders or something, it's just to followers, so you can use the spell card, My Precious Little Devil, along with it to be dealing 4 damage or something. Alright, next up we have Jugasaki Rika, so she's a 1-cost 1/1, and you can evolve her for 2. And looking at the Rika Evolve, so she turns into a 2/2, and on Evolve you search for a spell with a enriched cost of 3 or less from your deck and you put it into your hand. So it looks like, looking at a lot of the rune cards for Cinderella girls, most of these cards, or at least 2 of the cards that we've seen so far, are just Merlin with extra steps. But moving on, we have Kobayaki Sai, so she's 1-cost 1/2, and when she comes into play Fanfare, you choose another Daruma's followers on your field and you give a +1/+1. This card is definitely good in my opinion, especially if you're going to be swinging with Storm and then you have the extra play points to just give something a buff. So you give a follower that already has Storm, you know, some extra damage, and then your opponent does have to focus on that card. Next up we have Murakami Tomoe, so she's a 6-cost 5/5, and when we play this card, discard a card, subtract 2 from this card's cost. When it comes into play, you search for up to 2 spell cards with different names from your deck and you put them into your hand. So if you have any flex spots in your Runecraft deck, I would say this is something to look at, especially since you get to reduce the card by discarding a card, not just a spell, just a card. You can get rid of anything to make this a 4-cost 5/5, and then it being played, you're able to replace the card that you discarded, and then searching those 2 cards are pretty nice as well. And then we have Paranormal of Full Bloom, so it's a 5-cost quick spell. You choose up to 2 followers from enemy field and destroy them. In my opinion, I think this spell is pretty interesting just because you can take care of 2 followers on their turn in quick timing, but if you leave 5 play points up, your opponent's gonna be a little sus of something. Alright, and then we have the alternate arts for this set. So the first card we have is the Shiki, the legendary evolve card that does damage to you, and then you're able to make the card cost 0 in your EX area. And then we have the Shiki, where you discard the 3 Doremus cards and you can subtract 6 from this card's cost, draw 2 cards, and then deal 4 damage. But alright soldiers, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and be safe in whatever you do tonight, and be safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Yeah, TRINN, just to get you away. What I got to do?